In this video, I want to talk about multiplication and exponentiation with regards to fractions. All right. So imagine that you had 2/3 of a pizza. That means you have you cut it up into 3 pieces, and you had 2 of those 3 pieces. Now, let's say you wanted to have half of that quantity. Okay, half of those 2 slices. Well, can you see that half of 2 slices would be one of those same slices? So doesn't that make sense that a half of 2/3 is 1/3? All right. All right. Now, suppose instead of a half of 2/3, I wanted 1/4 of 2/3. Okay. So the problem with 2/3 is we can't divide it into 4 pieces. So let's do this. We know that 2/3 is equivalent to several other fractions. Let me write that as, let's multiply the top and bottom of 2/3 by 4, and that will give 8/12, right? So now imagine I chopped a pizza into 12 pieces, and I have 8 of those. So 8/12 means I have 8 of those 12ths, okay? Now I want 1/4 of that. What's 1/4 of 8? In other words, what's 8 divided by 4? Okay, that's 2. So can you see that this answer would be 2 of those tiny slices? Okay, and you can reduce that if you wish. All right, and then for my last example, I want to do 3/4 times 2/3. Okay, now this is gonna be, the last example that I just did gave me 1/4 of 2/3. This one is going to be 3 times as much, right? Because 3/4 is 3 times as much as 1/4. So what do I get if I triple the second answer? Well, the second answer was 1/6. 3 of those would be 3/6, okay? Or you can reduce that to 1/2. All right? So all of that was to argue why these answers are correct. All right? And they are correct, by the way. Now, by continuing along this line of reasoning, you would notice a pattern that always comes up. Okay? You would notice that the answer is always the same, as if you had not really thought about pizza slices, but instead multiplied the numerators and denominators together. Okay? Let me show you what I mean. So the first one, the numerators are 1 and 2. What's the product of 1 and 2? 2. And then in the denominators are 2 and 3. What's the product of 2 and 3? 6. Can you see that 2/6 is equal to our answer? Okay, and this would work for all of them. For the next one, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, that would give the product of 2/12, which is equal to the boxed answer. For the last one, 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 would give 6/12, which is equal to that answer. All right, so to summarize, you can understand multiplication, fraction multiplication with pizza slices and making the slices bigger or smaller so that you can divide them up how you necessarily need to. Or you can see that that is equivalent to simply multiplying the numerators and denominators together. All right, let's do a few more examples. So how about 5/6 times 7/10? Now, again, you could try to understand it by, chopping slices for the next 10 minutes, or you can just use the pattern I showed you. 5 times 7 is 35, 6 times 10 is 60, okay? And you will often have to reduce your answer, so that is a correct answer, but that doesn't mean that it can't be reduced to something else, an equivalent answer that's also true. By the way, that should be 7/12, not 7/10. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 60 divided by 5 is 12. Okay? One more. 4/6 multiplied by 8/12. Now, the reason I'm doing this example is that you saw in the last example that I reduced the answer. Okay? Now this is going to make your life easier. There's no reason you couldn't reduce the fractions before you do the multiplication. Okay, so if I was to do this multiplication, I'd do 4 times 8, give me 32, and 6 times 12 would give me 72. Those are big numbers. Okay, and then you'd have to reduce that, which is fine. But if you reduced first, then your life would be easier. Watch this. Instead of doing that, I'm going to turn 4 over 6 into 2/3. I'm going to turn 8 over 12 into 2/3. And so I'm going to multiply those together. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. If you reduce the 32 over 72 by dividing the top and bottom by 8, you will see that that is the same answer, but it took you more work to get there. Okay? Now, let's talk about exponentiation. So we know that exponents are simply, exponentiation is repeated multiplication. So if you understand fraction multiplication, you can do fractional exponents. So for example, 1/2 squared is equal to the multiplication 1/2 times 1/2, which we just learned how to do. So 1/4. What about if the exponent was something else besides 2? Like what about 3? 1/3 cubed, well, that's just, you have 3 fractions that you multiply together. So just pick, it doesn't, remember multiplication is associative, so if you want to do the first pair, then you multiply that answer by the last fraction, and you'll end up with 1 over 27. All right? You'll notice if you think along these lines that even if you have 10 fractions, you just multiply all 10 numerators, and then you multiply all 10 denominators. In this case, you have 1 times 1 times 1 gives 1. On bottom, 3 times 3 times 3 gives 27. Okay? One more example, 2/5 cubed. So, so 2/5 times 2/5 times 2/5. So multiplying the numerators all together, you get 2 cubed. And multiplying the 5s together, you get 5 cubed. So this is yet another way to think about exponentiation with fractions. You simply distribute the exponent to the numerator and denominator. Okay, what do I mean by that? Notice that the original 3, that exponent, I put a copy in front of the 2, the numerator, and a copy in front of the 5, or up and to the right. Okay, so that's how I got 2 cubed over 5 cubed, and that is 8 over 125. All right.